Thank you everyone for joining us for another session of Exploration Tech. My name is Jared Hackbart. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Brilliance, and we have a really inspiring, exciting guest that we met not too long ago, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. I'm going to let Lori introduce herself as usual, and then pass it off to Dorothy.
Yes, hi, I'm Lori McDonald. I'm the President and CEO at Brilliance Business Solutions. A little bit of background on myself. I went to Purdue in computer electrical engineering, and through an internship at Purdue, I ended up at NASA Johnson Space Center, where I eventually worked as a flight controller for the space shuttle program, which was a super cool experience. I ended up meeting my husband there. He also was an engineer at Purdue. Also worked as a flight controller at NASA, and eventually he went to work at Rockwell Automation, and he had a promotion that brought us to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where Rockwell's headquarters are. And that was in 1998, and I was trying to figure out what could be as cool as space. And so I decided to start a web development company. And so 20 plus years later, now 9 years ago, my husband left his job at Rockwell, and now he leads our development team, and we've developed a niche in working with manufacturers and distributors to help them implement e-commerce. And actually, we've seen a lot of great growth. And this year we made the Inc. 5000 list. And as a part of that growth, something that, super exciting. And, one of the things that's often on my mind is how important innovation is, both for us in our growth and also for our clients that we're working with. Certainly when we're implementing digital commerce, it's all about innovation. And I also think innovation really is closely tied to leadership, which is why I'm so excited that we get to talk to Dorothy today. And Dorothy, I'll just say this. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Dorothy. But as Jared said, we met Dorothy earlier this year. I'm just so impressed with her energy. And so when we talk, I just learned so much. And I know we're going to learn a lot today together. So this is a gift to me that she's joining us here. Dorothy, I want to let you introduce yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Dorothy Enriquez. I'm the principal and founder of the Communication Strategist, which is a boutique learning and leadership development firm. We're dedicated to helping organizations and individuals help their leaders optimize their leadership so that they can be equipped to lead from every seat they sit in at work and beyond.
Dorothy, tell us about the gap that you see in many organizations that you work with when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, so I spent about 15 years in corporate America in a variety of different roles, different industries, different departments, operations, sales, human resources, background screening, insurance, CPG, medical, like healthcare. And in looking at these different experiences, especially when I didn't only have an internal role, but I had an external role as well, being able to go into different organizations to do training and development, I noticed over that, almost 2-decade time frame, there's a gap, and there's a gap at every single level, from emerging leader all the way to the C-suite. And I thought to myself, how? I could see an emerging leader, there being gaps, right, and areas to fill and develop and bevel the edges. I could even see it with a new leader, possibly even a middle manager. But after that, why would we still be having gaps, right? All the way to the C-suite. And I believe, just based on what I've seen, clients that I've worked with in the past, and then of course research as well, part of it is because I don't know what it is about leadership, but for many of us, we feel like leaders are born and that they're not created. And because of that, when we see a high performer at work, we say to ourselves, aha, they can lead the troops. And what they will do is create more people just like them. So Lori, because you are killing it at work, we have made so much money because of you. Let's promote you to leader, manager of the people. And we need you to create 5 more people just like you. But what we forget is that Lori is a high performer and a high achiever. She's an individual contributor, and she loves what she does. She has the opportunity to do what she loves every single day. And now we're asking her to step away from that, learn the art of delegation, learn the art of being able to coach and develop people in order to be effective, and that she cannot clone herself because she doesn't want a homogenous team if she wants to be innovative. And Lori is supposed to know this how? How is she supposed to know this?
Exactly. Yes.
And so then Lori proceeds to be on the struggle bus for the next 18 to 24 months. However, and everyone's suffering right along with her, right? The people who report to her, her peers, her leader, who's like, you were a superstar. What is your problem?
Right.
What's wrong with you? And this whole gap, right, in transitioning from position to position, opportunity to opportunity, without getting the proper development. Because what we know is that 83% of organizations, like across the United States, are like, leadership is important. We have to put time and money and effort into this. But of all the organizations, 84% of them are like, who will lead the company in the next 5 years? What are we going to do? There's a shortfall in leadership. We should do something. But of all the companies that have been surveyed, right, and of course we haven't, the researchers haven't had a chance to survey every single organization, but in doing this body of work, what we've found is that 19%, a whopping 19% of organizations say we're really effective at developing great leaders.
Wow.
19%?
Yeah.
So of course, there's going to be a gap, and it's going to not just be a skills gap, right? Because a lot of times people want to use training as a Band-Aid, and it's not. It cannot be, well, they suck, train them. She's unwilling, train her. He's difficult, train him. We can't use it as a Band-Aid, but essentially, it's not simply a skills gap, which is part of the bigger issue, yes, but it's also a mindset and a tool set issue too. We have to develop the whole leader. We can't just develop a portion of them and expect them to go be successful and innovate and be able to sustain that.
There are so many reasons I love what you're saying. I mean, for one, I think the idea that leaders that it is something you can develop is so important, because we, if we have a picture of what a leader looks like, we might think it doesn't look like us. And so the idea that like we can do that, right? I love it.
People in the back.
Yeah. You talked about how it's, it's not just about, training a skill set, and many organizations, I think, who are looking to grow leaders will bring in a consultant or send someone out to get training, like go send them to a conference. Like, what could go wrong?
Right. I think so many things could go awry, right? I mean, when we look at the data, for the larger organizations, they often invest anywhere between $1,100 and $1,500 per person for development annually. Now, during COVID, that number has declined because, of course, naturally, many organizations are just trying to figure out how to keep the doors open from the couch. And so with that number has decreased, but $1,500 isn't that much. So that's part A, right? And then part B is that also includes the internal training that you get, which could be your ethics training that you have to take every year, your sexual harassment training that you have to take every year. And this isn't necessarily going towards helping you to be a better leader. And a lot of times, the development courseware that an organization may garner for you is not necessarily around your leadership capacity and skill. It's your ability to actually do the role. Because what we know is that we have working managers. It's not like 30, 40, 50 years ago when you managed people, that's all you did. No. Now you have a whole job and you've got whole folks that you have to manage on top of that whole job. So when we look at how much organizations aren't investing, they are then saying, you know what? We've got a brilliant idea. Let's go ahead and send Dorothy to the conference. Dorothy, be there for 3, 4, 5 days. Come back and teach us everything that you know. And Dorothy's jazzed about it. Like, yes, I get to take a flight. Maybe I'll go business class. It's going to be great. I get to get away. It's sunny wherever I'm going. Yippee skippy. I go to this conference. I'm so amped up. I cannot wait to get back to my organization because essentially we are going to turn this company on its head. It's going to be great. I come back. I start training, my peers and colleagues, and they're like, whoa. what is this shim sham that you speak of? Like, our culture cannot support this. We cannot sustain. If we do this, we're going to have to change policies, procedures that have been in place for years. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we really like all of that you learned. Keep that to yourself and let's get back to work. So of course, naturally, what is Dorothy going to do? She's going to disengage, because I'm so excited about what's happening in this space, whether it's operations, HR, sales, marketing, and we could take our organization to the next level. And now we can't, because our culture doesn't sustain it. Our culture doesn't have the scaffolding to support what's new, what's exciting, what's edgy, what's going to help us, really stand out in the marketplace. And now I'm just stuck with all this extra knowledge, but I can't apply any of it. And it just, to me, that's the hardest part. I remember going through that at almost every company I worked at, because you, as an organization, you want to be leading the pack. You want to be innovative, but you also are trying to operate within the context of your culture too. And it just starts to feel a little stifling at times. Whether you're sending the whole entire team to the experience or a portion of the team or just one person, we have to be thoughtful to make sure that the culture can hold up what's new and exciting in whatever industry that we're in.
I want to revisit the first question, because I feel like there are 2 points that we had discussed in prep that would be good to hit. Specifically, the drop-off of women in leadership and the plateau in middle management. Can you speak to that at all, Dorothy, in regards to that gap that you're seeing with organizations when it comes to leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have seen over the years, and every organization for the most part has seen it if they're large enough, right? So when we think about women, people of color, and being in leadership roles, the map usually looks like, and then it's basically like a straight line. It gets very flat. And so what we know is, when it comes to that drop off, especially for women taking the off ramp, or just basically sitting in the same role for 5 to 7 years, part of that is a lack of development. Part of that is a lack of real feedback. And part of that is a lack of consideration for how women come into leadership in the first place. The way that women ascend into leadership, whether she's a person of color or not, looks very different than how men ascend into leadership. And what we also know is that a lot of times women aren't getting real feedback because people are worried they're going to cry. And, I was just talking to a fellow D&I expert a few minutes before we jumped on here. And it's one of the things I shared was, is it possible that a woman may cry at getting that 2% feedback that she actually needs to develop? Sure, it's possible. It's possible for a man to cry as well. Tears are not, though. We need that feedback in order to be able to move forward, because without real feedback that is actionable in order to move our careers forward, what happens is we stagnate. And when a person stagnates, especially if you are a high achiever and you have high hopes and aspirations for your career, but you are yourself, so you cannot see yourself, which is why we require real feedback. Without it, then you start to think, am I capable? Am I competent? Am I adding value? Am I valuable? And then, especially what we see with Black women, they are, after a while, when they notice that they've plateaued, they just exit the workforce altogether and become entrepreneurs, right? Like, Black women are starting businesses at the fastest rate ever. And part of it isn't because they just woke up like, oh, I've wanted to be an entrepreneur my whole life. It really is because the corporate America culture has really failed that demographic, and being able to sustain what's necessary in order for them to be great leaders. And then also, part of the reason why we see a plateau with women leaders is because a lot of organizations have unconscious bias around women who look a certain age, right? So when they look a certain age, when they look young, or when they look like they're in their childbearing years, essentially. A lot of organizations feel like, oh, well, she's probably going to get married and she's not going to want to ascend. She's probably going to have children and she's not going to want to travel. She's probably going to start a family and get a significant other, and she's just going to want to kind of play it safe. But what's important to note is that as an organization, we can't decide for people what they're going to want to do or not want to do. Essentially, we have to ask, hey, there's this great opportunity coming up. Would you be interested? But I think, when we think about privilege, a lot of people may think, well, I've never had to ask. It's always fallen in my lap. But when we think about women or people of color, that may not always be the journey. And so from a leadership standpoint, we essentially have to make up our minds that we're going to be courageous, even though we don't know what's on the other side of the courage. And we have to speak up, right? Like, if we don't speak up, we can't be heard, which means that we cannot lead. And so when I look at this gap, doesn't matter what company it's in, every company, every organization says we need to fix this. Yes, you need to fix it, sure, but what are you going to do from a cultural standpoint to make sure that it gets fixed? It cannot be, let's just get everybody a mentor. What we know, especially for people of color, is that mentoring programs don't work. The mentor gets all the accolades, not the mentee. And so what we need is to have sponsorship programs where this individual's name can be said in the rooms that they're not in yet, right? By somebody who really understands the way that women ascend into leadership and the way that women of color ascend into leadership looks very different, but we have to take that into account to make sure that the representation is there.
That's some powerful, great information. Thank you for sharing that, and what a great message to be promoting out here. Thank you. I want to bring it back to what you were talking about before in regards to the conferences, specifically around the mindset and that tool set that enables you to sustain what you learn. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, I think that what I have noticed is that, once organizations realize that there's a skills gap, they're like, okay, now we know what the problem is. Folks are having a lot of challenges around communicating effectively. Let's fix that. Because we know, according to Harvard Business Review, that's one of the key factors when being considered for promotion is your ability to communicate. Let's send them to communication classes, or let's send folks to public speaking classes. We noticed that I think every organization that I've been in, one of the complaints has been, why can't people think critically? Well, I don't think critical thinking skills are automatic. That is something that you learn. And what we also know is that you don't learn that in school. You could take some sort of critical thinking class in college, but that's an elective. It's usually not required. And then you graduate, you go into the world of work, and they're like, why are people embracing like rote learning? Why can't they flip the script and really process things differently? And I don't understand. Send them to X class. But while skill set is important, especially if we're going to move the organization forward and advance our mission, our vision, our value proposition, and whatever else that an organization is trying to do, there has to be some things on the other side of that to make sure that it gets anchored and it's sustainable, right? Because if you want me to close a skills gap around, I don't know, communication or public speaking, but my mindset around the importance of communication and public speaking, the role that it will play in my role in this company, the impact that it will have if I don't do it, my attitude in general towards it, how I behave, whether I'm aware of my behavior or not. All of these things play a role in me being able to attend this class and actually doing something. How often have we taken a class? We've taken the weight loss class. Oh, yes, we have. And then we gained the COVID-19. But we took the class, right? It's a mindset thing because we inherently know what we need to do, but are we going to do it? No, we're still like, oh my God, I'm still gaining weight. What is this? What is happening? But it's a mindset thing. And then on top of that, on the other side of that, in between that skill set, we've got our mindset, but we also need the tool set, right? Because you could know what you need to do, but that subconscious piece gets in the way all the time, telling you, wow, you know you want that cookie. Like, you know you hate public speaking. You know every time you get up there, you threw up once. Remember that? Do we want to put ourselves through that again?
Right.
Seriously. And you've got this stuff going on in your mind that is essentially, it might be offering up true data, right? But we have to have the mindset in order to support these new skills that we're acquiring in order to be able to sustain it. And that's where the tool set comes from. Okay, so I already know that when it comes to this weight loss journey, oh my goodness, this life of mine, I cannot buy the cookies. I cannot buy the candy corn. I cannot buy the chips, because if I don't have it in the house, especially since we're, in some form of quarantine, then I'm not going to do it. Right.
Yeah.
But if I just took the class on how to lose the weight, or how to communicate more effectively, or how to, deliver more impactful presentations, we have to have all of those pieces together in order to think critically. Because then what happens is, when it comes to delivering the presentation for my peers, I'm stellar. But as soon as I get in front of executives, I fail. Right. But I need the mindset and the tool set to know, while the executives aren't my peers, I've had some practice in this area. I've got some skills in this area. What do I need to be doing? What do I need to be thinking about? What do I need to be telling myself? How can I manage the inner critic around my complete crippling fear around speaking in front of executives? Because in the back of my mind, I feel like they don't want to listen to me. They think that I'm not on their level, whatever the case may be. But we need all three parts if we're going to be effective. It cannot just be that we're going to train for skill set. And what I've also noticed is, in looking through and combing through the data, a lot of organizations will say, like, we did all this training for them. Why can't they get their mind right? Like, okay. And that's perfect. Now we know where we need to focus our efforts around how people are going to be able to leverage the skill set in a way that will be impactful, but also sustainable. It cannot be that we take this class and it only applies in this one category. We have to be able to basically create transferable skills, even though it was a critical thinking class, a public speaking class, a personal branding class, a decisioning class, whatever the case may be. We have to figure out how to put these components together to make sure that it works. And what I've noticed, though, too, on the other side of that, is that companies are like afraid to make that level of investment, because they're like, man, so, okay, we normally invest $1,500, but if we invest $5,000 in this person, what if they quit? Yes, but what if they stay? What if they say? You want to make sure that you have the best leaders in position for them to innovate. And even if they quit, seriously, you're making the world a better place, right? Because now they are taking their leadership with them, because their leadership is theirs. It's not yours. It's theirs. And they're gifting it to the company. But now they can be more equipped in this next organization and not be flapping in the wind, being all wild, because they're not prepped, they're not ready, they're not equipped, and they don't fundamentally know how to optimize their leadership. Because even if you don't have direct reports, you're still a leader.
Totally agree. And I think, to me, it's about like doing the right things. Do we want to be an organization that helps people to be better, to be their best, even if that means they may outgrow us, right? And in the long term, that pays off. That's my belief. You get a reputation for being an organization that cares about people and wants to develop them, and then that'll attract people too. Dorothy, when we think about like 2020, man, like this year, right, is something else. And when I think about, organizations are really looking at how they spend their money, and you noted earlier that organizations are kind of cutting back in some cases on how they invest in training and in leadership development. So talk about like, why should organizations be investing money and time in this, and like how why is this important to innovation? Why does this matter right now when times are maybe a little bit tight?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I think now more than ever, companies are being even more innovative because they have to be, right? And we know, even if we learn the hard way, the best time to pivot is before you have to. So essentially, when we think about this war on talent, you want the best and brightest minds, and you don't want to just bring them into the organization, you want them to stay. And so when I think about investing in people and investing in leadership so that your people, whether they have direct reports or not, are optimized to lead from every seat, especially for organizations that are running lean, which is most of them, the majority of the time when innovation fails, it's actually because of leadership. And people are like, what? Mind blown. How? How would it be because of leadership? It's because of all these other things. But the reason why it kind of lives and dies on leadership is because a lot of times in the process of innovating, companies get distracted. And when we don't have those voices, those leaders who are making sure that their voice is heard, even if they're a voice of dissent, saying, we actually need to make sure that we're doing XYZ. We actually need to consider ABC. When we're not optimized for leadership, we aren't going to have that type of courage and self-efficacy to say something. And so what ends up happening, even with that spirit of innovation and pivoting and needing to do different things, an organization may lose sight of that and say, yes, but we need to make money. Yes, but we need to make sure that these clients are happy. Yes, but we need to think about our processes and procedures. Right, but the innovation being able to be sustained because it's new, it's different. Clearly, we haven't done it before. That's why it's innovative. And our counterparts or our competitors probably haven't done it either. We're the first or the second. And so because of that, we need leaders who are willing to stand in the gap, even when they don't know what's going on completely and they don't have all the answers. The phrase "I don't know" has to be okay, but then there also has to be a culture that welcomes people saying, "I don't think we're doing this right. I think we need to approach this differently because it is innovative. We haven't done it before, or maybe we've done something similar, but this is different. How do we create a culture where people can speak up? Because we've seen what happens when people can't get their poop in a group. BlackBerry, right?
Right.
When we don't want to innovate and when we don't want to allow leaders to lead, even when, to Lori's point, they don't look like what we think of as a leader, because we know corporate America in the United States still has a type, right? And when we think of leaders and when we think of CEOs, we think of a white male, 6 feet, because that demonstrates competence, confidence, and capability. But because we know leaders come in all different shapes and sizes, we have to be thoughtful, right? Because when we're not thoughtful, we end up with the Segway. The Segway could have been a revolution. Like, had that gone well, most of us probably wouldn't be in cars right now, unless you live in the frozen tundra like us and it gets too cold to be in a Segway. But the guy who was developing the Segway was so like tunnel vision in his viewpoint that he didn't want feedback from anybody. He was so worried that everyone was going to steal his idea, and it ended up not working, partially because it was so expensive and he was not able to pull on innovative minds to make sure that he thought about everything as much as you can when you are being innovative. And now you see Segways at the mall, basically, right? He absolutely missed the opportunity because he wasn't willing to lead. And part of being a great leader is being humble enough to follow. And he couldn't do it And that's why the segue is where it is, right? Like at some point, if we're going to be innovative, we have to invest the dollars in leadership, because essentially, if you invest $1,000 in this person and you're going to make $1,001, it's worth it. From a business standpoint, it's worth it because you are making money. So I think it's important for us to look at that as we're looking at the budget and as we're looking at these people that we're trusting to carry the organization forward.
I will just say that I think this is like everything you're speaking, Dorothy, speaks to me personally and as a leader. Like, I think this is so important. I think about the organizations we work with, they're all being forced to pivot right now to do things differently. And to do that, it's not just a matter of having one person with a brilliant idea, to your point. It's a matter of having, to use your words, like leaders at every level, right? And who are able to troubleshoot, because not everything's going to go perfectly, and who are able to disagree with each other and work through it together. And those are all things that we need, skill sets, mindsets, and tool sets to be able to do effectively. And I just feel like, wow, I have so many more things I want to learn from you, Dorothy, and I just so appreciate you spending the time with us today in this. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we close?
Sure. I mean, if you are if you're running an organization, you're a leader in an organization, and you're thinking, wow, I'd like the opportunity to explore, a workshop series to close the skills gap while thinking about, the impact on our culture and can our culture sustain this, feel free to reach out to me. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to book a discovery call right from my page, Dorothy Enriquez. And we can talk about what it would look like to transform the way folks lead within the context of your organization. Because I think it's not an overnight thing. Oftentimes when organizations are taking these types of endeavors on, it's like a 9 to 24 month experience. But also, leadership is a continuous journey. And so ultimately, I just want to thank you all for having me. And everyone who is tuning in, you are a leader. Even if you don't feel like a leader, even if you don't think you look like a leader, you are a leader. It does not require direct reports, because leadership is influence. And we all have influence over others. And therefore, just by nature of you being alive and breathing, you are required to lead from every seat you sit in. So I hope you'll accept the challenge.
If you are sitting on this call and you're not inspired enough to go and follow Dorothy and the Communication Strategist and LinkedIn, you're pretty. Come on, people. I wish we had more time to go through a bunch more content. We're going to have to try to convince Dorothy to do another session with us, because this was fantastic. Again, Dorothy Enriquez, the Communication Strategist, thank you so much for taking time with us today. I highly recommend you guys go out there and connect with her, and we'll look forward to being in touch with all of you soon. Thank you, and have a great day.